Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice podcast topic name is 25 plus C2 level vocabulary work.
Welcome. And if you're tuning in, well, you're basically signaling you're ready to take your professional English up a serious notch. You're moving beyond just describing your job, aren't you? You're aiming to really analyze, dissect the workings of the modern workplace. Speak with the kind of authority we might call, well, a linguistic executive.
That's exactly it. That's the goal today. Our mission is this deep dive. Think of it as a shortcut, really, to getting that unparalleled precision when you talk about corporate life. We are definitely moving past the basics like, fire or meat.
Yeah, the simple stuff.
We're getting straight into the C2 language, the conceptual stuff that defines high-level strategy, those complex organizational dynamics, and, of course, modern labor practices. These are the words that really shift your competence into, demonstrable mastery.
And that really is the value proposition of C2 vocabulary, isn't it? These terms will cover things like retrenchment, quorum, or hot desk. They aren't just fancier synonyms, no. They're more like specialized tools for analysis.
Tools, I like that.
Yeah, they're pretty indispensable if you need to navigate complex, maybe high-stakes situations. Whether you're, say, drafting a policy paper, sitting in on an executive review meeting, or even just trying to understand a major economic report in depth. So this deep dive, it's about getting not just the definition, but the precise context, the strategic nuance, and crucially, the practical application of each term.
That deep context is absolutely what we're aiming for. So let's skip the preamble, shall we? Let's dive right into the core of corporate reality, starting with something that's, often uncomfortable, but totally essential, the language around organizational change and letting people go.
Right. Kicking things off with the vocabulary of letting go.
Right.
So when big companies hit financial turbulence, they rarely just announce, cuts. It's more sophisticated. They talk about initiating financial strategies. And these are designed to stabilize the books. Here, we really need to draw a careful line between two key C2 terms, retrenchment and downsizing.
Let's start with TOEFL Trench 4. This one feels quite immediate, doesn't it? It seems focused squarely on cutting expenses and specifically by dismissing or furloughing employees. It's like a sharp financial reaction.
Exactly. It's often a severe, quite immediate response. You see it directly linked to sudden external pressures. Maybe a sharp drop in falling revenues. That's a common trigger. Or sometimes it's internal policies, things like company-wide austerity measures. So when a business decides to retrench, it's making an aggressive move to essentially economize the workforce. It's often about short-term survival.
Okay, economize the workforce, that carries a certain weight. So it implies severity, maybe even a kind of strategic retreat?
It does. It has that feel of pulling back out of necessity.
Yeah.
Now, to downsize 6, this is very closely related, obviously, but the emphasis shifts just slightly. While cutting staff is still part of it, the main stated goal is often organizational improvement.
Okay.
So reducing staff primarily to cut costs, yes, but also sometimes framed more positively to increase efficiency, perhaps. The idea is you're trying to streamline the workforce or maybe rationalize the whole structure for better long-term health or profitability.
Right. And the context you use them in probably highlights that difference. I mean, both might happen because of, say, automation taking over jobs.
A very common driver now.
But the way companies talk about it is different. Downsizing sounds more strategic, more planned, maybe. Less desperate than retrenchment.
Precisely. It's often framed as proactive, a strategic choice, whereas retrenchment can sound reactive, maybe a bit desperate. But it's crucial to remember that our sources highlight downsizing still carries a significant human cost. It frequently leads to really deep morale issues among survivors. The people left behind often feel insecure, anxious.
Yeah, I can see that. It's never just a clean number on a spreadsheet. It's often organizational trauma.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving from these big organizational strategies down to the individual level separations. Here, the legal and emotional nuances get even finer. Let's consider to pension off.
Pension off, that sounds gentler, but it's not voluntary retirement, is it?
No, that's the key distinction. It implies a compulsory, often quite strategic, forced retirement. Typically, it involves an older or more senior employee who receives a specific financial package as part of the separation.
So, still strategic, even if it sounds a bit softer than just being fired. Why would a company choose this specific route?
It serves a few distinct purposes. You often see it used in corporate restructuring specifically to make way for younger talent.
Yeah.
It's a way to manage generational change without the sort of negative baggage of sacking someone.
Yep.
It's also, quite frankly, a direct cost-cutting tool during economic downturns. Highly paid senior staff might be pensioned off prematurely simply to save on salary costs. Now, sometimes it can be presented as an honorable exit. You might read, "A veteran executive was pensioned off with a generous package." But very often, when used strategically, it's essentially a formal compulsory termination just wrapped up in a financial incentive or package.
Okay, that formality and the sense of necessity seem to contrast quite sharply with the next term, to lay off, 9. This one feels different.
Very different in its cause. To lay off is almost strictly tied to external factors, usually financial difficulties the company's facing, or simply a reduced need for the work being done. Crucially, it's not about the individual employee's performance.
Right, the job itself becomes redundant, or the company just can't afford that role anymore. The synonyms really clarify this, don't they? Like to make redundant or to furlough.
Exactly. And you see this playing out all the time in the news, linked to current events. A manufacturing plant might lay off an entire shift because demand in that sector has dropped. Or very commonly now, because automation has been implemented. That's a clear tech-driven change leading to layoffs.
And when people are laid off, is it always permanent?
Well, it's often presented as temporary, a furlough perhaps, but frequently it does become permanent. And importantly, the whole process involves navigating legal requirements around severance pay and adhering to labor laws, what we call necessary fair practices.
Okay. Then we get to the most direct form of dismissal, often linked to performance. To sack, 7. This one feels unambiguous.
It is. It means, quite simply, to dismiss someone from their job. What really defines the context here is the cause, which is almost always something the employee did or didn't do. Either persistent underperformance, perhaps despite warnings or coaching, or a serious misconduct violation. That points towards an ethical breach, or maybe a legal one, a violation of their employment contract.
It's a forceful term. But even here, protections exist, right?
Absolutely. That's what stands out. Even with a term as direct as sack, labor protections immediately come into play. Management generally has the right to sack based on clear, documented performance issues or misconduct, but laws exist to prevent arbitrary sacking.
Meaning they can't just do it on a whim.
Correct. The company needs proof, documentation, and usually has to follow a specific due process. It reinforces the idea that even these more forceful terminations are typically governed quite heavily by labor laws and established HR procedures.
Okay. And through all these difficult transitions, being laid off, sacked, even sometimes pensioned off or leaving voluntarily, companies often want feedback, don't they? Which brings us to the exit interview, 27.
Yes, the exit interview. This is a structured discussion. It's held with an employee who is departing, regardless of the reason for their departure. And it's definitely more than just a polite farewell chat.
It's a tool for HR.
Exactly. It's a critical feedback mechanism. HR uses it specifically to try and improve retention rates by understanding why people are leaving. Are there underlying, maybe systemic issues? If the exit interviews consistently reveal problems, perhaps poor management, lack of development opportunities, or even a toxic work environment, then management gets the vital insights needed to make changes. So it can be a really powerful tool for preventing future turnover, for informing retention strategies.
Wow, okay. Just that first section really shows the power of having the right C2 vocabulary. It allows for such a nuanced analysis of how companies handle staff separation. All right, let's pivot completely now. Let's focus on the language of cohesion and structure the organizational mechanics. How does the organization actually run internally? How does it operate and make decisions?
Good transition. To really understand the inner workings of any complex organization, you first need a way to visualize its structure, its anatomy, if you will. And that leads us straight to the organogram.
The organogram. I think most people probably know this better as an org chart, right?
That's the common term. Yes. An organogram is simply that diagram, the visual representation of the company's hierarchical structure. Think of it as the static map of the organization. Its fundamental purpose is clarifying reporting lines.
Who reports to whom?
Exactly. And where different departments or specialized functions sit within the overall framework.
When is it most useful?
Well, its utility really spikes during times of significant change. Think about after a merger or during a major internal reorganization. The organogram absolutely has to be updated post-reorganization to reflect the new reality. It's also fundamental during employee orientation, obviously. It gives new hires that initial visual blueprint for navigating the company's structure.
But it only shows the structure, right? It doesn't tell you what people are actually doing day to day.
Correct. It's the static map. In contrast to that, we have the dynamic operational plan, the roster 19. This is the detailed list showing specific assignments or duties over a certain period. So if the organogram defines authority, the roster defines activity.
Ah, okay. Authority versus activity. I like that distinction.
The roster is purely functional, purely operational. You see it used constantly in manufacturing for assigning shifts, in hospitals for scheduling nurses. Even project managers use it to finalize the specific team members assigned to a critical project phase or sprint.
So it's a key tool for HR and managers.
Crucial, especially because it often needs frequent updating when new hires join, or as production needs change, for example. And the two need to align, ideally. If the roster consistently pulls people away from their official reporting lines shown on the organogram, that's usually a recipe for confusion and inefficiency.
Makes sense. Okay, so we know who's where structurally and who's doing what operationally. Now we need the C2 language for how different parts of the organization actually connect and coordinate their efforts. That sounds like to liaise 13.
Precisely. To liaise. It means establishing communication or cooperation between different parties, could be individuals, teams, departments, even different organizations, to ensure their efforts are synchronized. It's fundamentally about coordination, about interfacing, acting as a bridge.
So intermediary roles often involve liaising.
Definitely. That's why we have specific job titles like liaison officer. You might have someone who liaises between the R&D department and marketing to make sure a product launch goes smoothly. But it's also used in much broader, higher stakes contexts. Think about diplomats who liaise to build international political relationships, or maybe consultants who liaise between a company's headquarters and its overseas branches.
Okay, coordinating efforts. And once that coordination is set up and the parties are ready to actually conduct business or finalize a deal, we used to transact, too. This sounds more formal, more action-oriented.
It is. To transact is the sophisticated formal C2 verb for conducting business, finalizing an agreement, or negotiating an exchange. It implies a formal process, often involving signed agreements, and usually significant value changing hands.
So big deals.
Often, yes. The examples point that way. The two technology firms transacted a multi-million-dollar merger. That sounds like a high-stakes deal requiring months of negotiation. But it also applies to the everyday mechanics of modern commerce. Retailers transact huge volumes of goods across borders using complex e-commerce platforms. Or think about the legal oversight needed to ensure parties transact fairly and transparently in highly regulated sectors, like large-scale real estate sales. It's about the formal act of exchange.
Got it. Okay, let's move to governance now. The vocabulary for how high-level decisions get made formally, it seems like it all starts with getting the right people together. That would be to convene 15?
Yes, to convene. This is the formal verb for assembling a specific group for an official meeting or gathering. It's definitely not just getting together for a chat. It implies a purpose, often official decision-making.
So it applies to regular meetings, too.
It does. Like a board of directors convening quarterly to review financial results. That's scheduled. But it also applies to urgent, high-pressure situations. You might need to convene a crisis team immediately after a major security breach, for example. Or think about world leaders convening global talks at a summit to discuss climate policy. The act of convening itself lends authority to the gathering.
And once you've convened this official group, there's a critical requirement before they can actually make binding decisions, isn't there? That's the quorum, 17.
Ah, quorum. Yes, this is absolutely vital for governance. It's the minimum number of voting members who must be present for the meeting to officially start, or more importantly, for any decisions made or votes taken to be legally valid and binding.
So, if you don't have quorum,
things grind to a halt, procedurally speaking. If a meeting lacks quorum, critical votes, like shareholder votes, have to be postponed. It's such a fundamental concept that every organization's bylaws or governing documents will strictly specify the exact quorum needed for different types of decisions, ensuring the whole process has legitimacy.
It's interesting, though, that even a traditional concept like quorum is adapting. I read that sometimes it can be achieved through virtual participation now.
That's a perfect example of C2 vocabulary keeping pace with modern life. The pandemic really accelerated this. For global organizations or during lockdowns, rules had to adapt to allow quorum to be met with members participating remotely, virtually. It complicates the definition of present, but the core principle needing that minimum number for legitimacy remains absolutely essential.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've covered structure, interaction, governance. Now let's talk about the specific teams and functions that keep the organizational engine running smoothly. The problem solvers and the specialists.
Right. Let's start with the act of fixing complex problems. To troubleshoot 8. This word implies more than just simple problem solving, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests a systematic process, like diagnosing and then rectifying a tricky challenge or a flaw, often iteratively, step by step.
Exactly. And the beauty of troubleshoot is how it applies across so many different fields. In IT, technicians troubleshoot network outages using specific diagnostic tools and procedures. In HR, a skilled manager might need to troubleshoot deep-seated team conflicts, often requiring diplomacy and mediation skills. And in R&D, engineers constantly troubleshoot flaws in prototypes. They identify a problem, fix it, test again, find the next problem. That iterative process is key. The method might vary, but that systematic diagnostic approach is the core of troubleshooting.
Okay. Now, moving to specific departments, we have the Assurance Department, 22. What's their focus?
The Assurance Department, sometimes called Quality Assurance or QA, is highly specialized. Their main job is ensuring compliance, maintaining quality standards, and mitigating risks. Their role is inherently preventative and analytical.
So they're like internal auditors.
In a way, yes. They conduct comprehensive audits, maybe, of manufacturing processes or financial reporting systems. They review procedures to make sure everything complies with regulations and internal standards, aiming to prevent breaches or failures before they happen. For someone considering a career path, working in assurance means gaining really valuable expertise in regulations and standards.
Yeah.
They become the organization's critical internal watchdogs, essentially.
That makes sense. So while assurance focuses on standards and prevention, the Operations Department, 26, is all about execution. They're the ones actually doing the core work.
Precisely. The Operations Department is the engine room. They handle the day-to-day management and the actual execution of the company's main business functions. Their focus is squarely on efficiency and output.
What kind of tasks?
Optimizing production lines, managing manufacturing schedules, ensuring the core processes of the business run smoothly. And because they're at the heart of it all, the Operations Department constantly needs to liaise and coordinate with other departments like sales to match production to demand, or procurement to ensure materials are available to keep the wheels turning.
Okay. And supporting both operations and assurance, especially in bigger companies, we have logistics, 25. This term seems broader than just shipping.
Much broader. At the C2 level, logistics needs to be understood precisely as the strategic management of supplying both labor and materials. It's about getting the right resources, people, equipment, materials to the right place at the right time for any given task or process.
So the scope is huge.
Massive and deeply strategic. Logistics covers everything from, say, ensuring the timely setup for a major corporate conference, managing the movement of people, equipment, displays, all the way to managing those incredibly complex global supply chains that feed modern manufacturing.
And we saw how crucial that is recently.
Absolutely. The strategic importance of efficient logistics became painfully clear when disruptions hit global networks. It highlighted their vulnerability and the critical need for robust planning and contingency measures. A failure in logistics can bring production to a halt and severely impact profits very quickly. It's a major strategic function.
All right, we've covered the internal mechanics. Now let's shift again, moving from the technical side to the human tensions that can arise. We need to address the vocabulary around labor disputes and ethical work environments. These can be difficult areas.
They can be. And the language reflects that seriousness. Okay, so when conflict between management and, say, organized labor escalates to an extreme point, management sometimes employs a very powerful and often highly controversial tactic to lock out 3.
A lockout. This sounds like a very aggressive move by the employer.
It is. It's a radical step. It means management actively prevents employees from entering the workplace, from doing their jobs, usually until the employees agree to new terms or conditions maybe related to pay, benefits, or working practices. It's essentially an industrial blockade, but initiated by the company itself to apply maximum economic pressure on the workforce.
When would this typically happen?
You usually see it during very severe labor conflicts. Perhaps an intractable wage dispute where negotiations have completely broken down. Or sometimes management might use it to try and force compliance with new rules, like maybe factory owners locking out staff to enforce mandatory, non-negotiable safety reforms that workers are resisting.
But there must be legal implications.
Huge ones. The critical point here is the legal framework. Worker rights are central in most places, and legal challenges or interventions are very common and often swift if a company is deemed to have illegally locked out its employees. Maybe they didn't follow required notification procedures, or they violated terms of an existing collective bargaining agreement. It's an extreme measure, carrying significant financial, reputational, and legal risks for the company.
Okay, an extreme tactic in internal disputes. Now, shifting focus to broader global ethical concerns, we have the term sweatshop, 18. This is a very loaded term, isn't it?
Extremely loaded, and rightly so. A sweatshop is defined as an exploitative workplace. The key characteristics are exceptionally low wages, often mandatory excessive working hours, and very poor, often unsafe working conditions. Historically and currently, it's often found in industries like garment and textile manufacturing, particularly in developing countries.
And the use of the term itself is often part of the effort to fight against these conditions.
Absolutely. The term is almost always linked to issues of transparency, labor rights advocacy, and international campaigns. Activist groups work tirelessly to expose sweatshop conditions where they exist. For major global brands, particularly in fashion and electronics, the pressure to avoid any association with sweatshops is immense.
So they try to ensure their supply chains are clean.
They do. It drives them to implement quite rigorous supplier audit programs, focusing on ethical sourcing and corporate social responsibility, CSR. There are ongoing global efforts aimed at improving worker rights and trying to eliminate these exploitative sites, but the sheer complexity of modern global supply chains makes comprehensive auditing incredibly difficult. The term sweatshop itself remains a powerful condemnation of utterly unacceptable labor practices.
These two terms really underscore the power dynamics and the high stakes involved in the world of work. Okay, let's move towards wrapping up. Let's focus now on the language of everyday professional life, things like attendance, how new people get integrated, and the vocabulary around modern, flexible ways of working.
Sounds good. A shift to the daily rhythm. Right, let's start with something fundamental. Tracking when employees are actually working. We have two key pairs of terms here, and they sort of reflect how workplace tech has evolved. Let's begin with a modern, digital pair. To clock in, 10, and to clock out, 12.
Okay, clock in and clock out. This feels very contemporary. It implies using some kind of electronic system, right? Like a swipe card, a biometric scanner, maybe, or even an app for remote workers.
Exactly. It's about using a timekeeping system, usually digital. The main function here is compliance and accuracy. Employees need to clock in promptly to ensure their working hours are recorded correctly for payroll. And forgetting to clock out, well, that can cause headaches with payroll calculations, especially around overtime or just ensuring compliance with labor laws.
Okay, that's the digital way. What about the older terms? To punch in 14 and to punch out 16.
Yes, the classics. This refers to the more traditional physical act of recording time. Historically, this involved inserting a stiff paper punch card into a mechanical time clock machine and literally pushing a lever or button which would stamp the time onto the card.
Right. I've seen those in old movies, often associated with factory workers or shift work.
Precisely. That was the traditional context. So punching in and punching out is essentially the manual mechanical ancestor of the digital clocking in and clocking out we use today. The technology has changed dramatically, but the underlying importance, it remains exactly the same. Accurate time tracking.
What about when someone deliberately tries to avoid work or fudge their attendance? There's a great C2 term for that, to skeeve.
A skeeve. Yes, it's a brilliant word, very descriptive. It means intentionally avoiding your work or responsibilities, often by staying away when you should be there or just generally neglecting your duties. Think of synonyms like to shirk or to malinger. It has a slightly informal feel, particularly in British English. But when used in a professional management context, it implies something quite serious. It's not just being a bit lazy.
Right, so there are consequences.
Oh, definitely. It's not taken lightly. Employees who are found to be skeeving regularly may be consistently taking extra long lunch breaks without permission or having patterns of unexplained absences. They would face formal disciplinary actions. Warnings, potentially leading up to termination. Managers often need to monitor attendance patterns, partly to deter skeeving and ensure everyone is contributing fairly.
Okay, noted. Moving from attendance to integration. When a new person joins a company, there's a whole process. The C2 term is to onboard 11.
Yes, to onboard. This refers to the formal, structured process of integrating and familiarizing someone new with the organization. And it's not just for employees. You can also onboard new clients onto a service or platform. It goes way beyond just giving someone their security pass and email login.
It's more strategic than just orientation.
much more. Effective onboarding involves things like comprehensive training sessions, maybe assigning a mentor, explaining the company culture, setting clear expectations. Tech companies, for instance, put a lot of effort into onboarding new clients seamlessly onto their software platforms, often using dedicated support teams.
And why is mastering this term at C2 level important? What's the strategic angle?
Because good onboarding isn't just a nice to have, it's directly linked, demonstrably linked, to boosting employee retention rates. If you onboard someone well, they feel supported, understand their role quickly, integrate better, and are more likely to stay long-term.
Whereas bad onboarding
Leads to confusion, frustration, and often high early turnover, which is incredibly costly for the company. So effective onboarding is a key retention strategy, especially now with more remote and hybrid work, where that face-to-face integration is harder.
That makes perfect sense. And speaking of hybrid work, that leads us neatly into the physical changes in modern offices. Let's talk about the hot desk, 23.
The hot desk. This refers to a workspace, a desk, chair, maybe a monitor setup that isn't assigned to any one specific employee. It's shared. You use it when you need it, then someone else uses it later.
So first come, first served, or booked in advance?
It varies. Sometimes it's first come, first served, but often, especially in larger places, there's a booking system, usually an app. The main driver behind hot desking was optimizing office space. If not everyone is in the office every day, you don't necessarily need a dedicated desk for every single employee.
And it fits well with open plan offices and flexible working.
Exactly. It promotes flexibility, encourages people to move around, potentially interact with different colleagues. It's particularly suited for what we now universally call hybrid work models.
But are there downsides?
Oh, definitely. While it's meant to foster collaboration, some employees find it unsettling. They might feel a lack of personal space or home base. It can also be tricky just finding colleagues if everyone's moving around. So for a hot desk system to work well, it needs really good organization, clear protocols, and often robust booking technology. Management has to tackle those practical hurdles.
And the reason hot desks became so prevalent is largely due to the rise of hybrid working. 24, right? This seems to be the dominant model now.
It really does. Hybrid working defines that specific structural model where employees split their working time. Some days they work from home or remotely, and other days they come into the physical office site.
And its significance, especially after the pandemic, is huge.
Immense. Generally speaking, it seems to boost employee satisfaction quite significantly because it offers that much desired flexibility and potentially better work-life balance. However,
There's always a however.
always. Implementing hybrid working successfully is more complex than just saying work where you like. Organizations have had to invest heavily in robust digital tools, communication platforms, collaboration software to keep everyone connected effectively, regardless of their location. And crucially, HR departments have had to completely rethink and redesign policies around attendance, performance management, team coordination, communication expectations. All of that needs adjustment for a hybrid environment.
Yeah, I bet coordinating team rosters and ensuring fairness is a real challenge for managers in that setup.
It's one of the biggest challenges reported by middle managers, absolutely.
Okay, one last term related to the daily grind, but this one's more psychological. Blue Monday, 21.
Blue Monday. Yes, this is that widely recognized feeling, maybe low motivation, bit of sadness, or just that general post-weekend slump that seems to hit a lot of people at the start of the work week, typically on a Monday.
It sounds informal, but does it have real workplace impact?
It really does. While the term itself might sound a bit casual, the phenomenon it describes can have measurable effects on things like productivity in offices and overall employee engagement. Some organizations actually try to proactively combat Blue Monday.
Oh.
Maybe by scheduling positive team-building activities on Mondays, launching wellness initiatives, or offering slightly more flexible start times specifically on Mondays. The aim is to lift morale, ease people back into the work week gently, and counteract that potential dip in energy and motivation.
Interesting. Okay, this has been an incredibly detailed journey through the C2 landscape of professional English. We've gone from the really tough language of corporate restructuring,
Retrenchment, downsizing.
all the way through governance, operations, ethics, and right down to the nuances of daily work life, like clocking in and, well, Blue Monday.
It's been quite comprehensive. And by really digging into these 25 plus C2 terms, you, the listener, should now feel much better equipped for those sophisticated high-level discussions about the workplace. You can analyze situations with more precision, talking about retrenchment versus layoffs, understanding the role of the assurance department, or discussing the challenges of managing hybrid working models that might use hot desks.
Exactly. You can do all that without falling back on simpler, less precise language. Your professional vocabulary palette is now significantly richer, more nuanced, and definitely more actionable. So our final challenge to you is this. Try to actively internalize this new knowledge. Put it into practice. Think about a recent work scenario you experienced, or maybe something you read about in the business news, perhaps a company announcing big changes. Try to describe or analyze what happened using, say, 3 to 5 of the specific C2 terms we explored today.
Yeah, make the connections. For example, how might the need to troubleshoot a recurring quality issue lead the assurance department to recommend changes that ultimately result in staff retrenchment, or maybe the need to onboard new specialists? Apply the context, apply the nuance. That's how you truly master this level of language, through diligent, consistent practice.
If this advanced professional palette has empowered you and given you the sophisticated language you were looking for, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Keep working toward mastery diligently.
Keep practicing. It makes all the difference.